It is 9 p.m. on the East Coast. I'm Ben Swan. Here are the stories we're working on right now. First, new reports say America is running low on some of its most powerful missiles. And now many are asking, is a strategy that we've been taking here just a strategic mistake? Plus, another escalation of the war between Russia and Ukraine. Russian officials say a Ukrainian drone strike near Moscow overnight is responsible for killing multiple people. And finally, one of the world's biggest messaging apps vanishes from the App Store. We'll find out why. On this show, we know that you don't need more content, but you do need context. Look, anybody can tell you what's happening in the news. Tonight, we hope to help you understand why it's happening, how it's happening, and how it affects you. This is America Now. And as we get going tonight, we've told you for weeks that this war with Iran is not just a political mistake, but that it is a strategic mistake when it comes to U.S. power. Tonight, we have a pair of stories that seem to prove what we've been telling you. Let's start with this one. First, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, he went on CNBC and said that the U.S. could have a deal with Iran by tomorrow to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. Listen.
We are in talks with the Iranians, and I think there is a chance we may have a deal today or tomorrow to open the Strait and move towards a more normalized position in this conflict.
Yeah, that sounds great, right? But here's what makes that statement so interesting, because we now know what Iran is asking for. According to the Wall Street Journal, Iran has signaled it is willing to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, but only if Tehran gets the right to collect transit fees. They also want security guarantees against future attacks, an end to the U.S. naval blockade, and relief from U.S. oil sanctions. The United States has rejected those demands. They say Iran must first reopen the Strait before any sanctions relief or any other concessions are even discussed. So, Bessent is describing a deal that sounds imminent, but publicly the two sides are still so far apart on what that deal would actually look like. Bessent says it's simple. Iran's military force is decimated.
If their air force is wiped out, their navy is wiped out, substantial portion of their missiles are wiped out. More importantly, their missile production capability is wiped out. So, anything that happens in the Gulf will benefit Japan and indeed the rest of the world.
Yeah, did you notice how he started that long list of all the things that they've done, the U.S. has done, with the word if? According to the Treasury Secretary, we bombed Iran into a deal, and now energy prices will drop and ships will move and everybody wins, right? Bessent says hundreds of ships are sitting in the Strait right now waiting to go.
Once the Strait reopens, there are hundreds, if not 1,000 ships sitting in there waiting to go out.
All right, that sounds good, but here's what Bessent did not say on air. Iran is publicly rejecting the very notion that this deal is taking place. A source told Press TV that the Iran-Oman talks, not Iran-U.S., Iran-Oman talks on Hormuz are happening without any U.S. participation at all, and that this would not be a joint deal with Washington. Instead, it would be an Iranian arrangement with Oman. The reported plan, a new intermediate corridor that shuts down both the old Iran-controlled northern route and the U.S.-backed southern route, replaced with one lane jointly run by Iran and Oman, with a joint fee system for about 3 months. And according to that same reporting, Iran would be the one to hold authority over every ship coming in. So, which is it? Is this a U.S. victory, like Bessent is selling on cable news today, or is this Iran walking away with more control of the Strait than it had before the war ever started? Not good for the United States in terms of our long-term reputation, right? Now, the second story. And this one matters long after this war comes to an end, because Reuters is reporting tonight that the U.S. Army has used up virtually all of its ATACMS and precision strike missiles during 5 months of fighting in Iran. We're talking about the Army's long-range precision surface-to-surface missiles. Each one costs over $1 million. By the way, these are the same missiles that the U.S. has been sending to Ukraine. Analysts say that they'd be critical in any future conflict with China. And right now, the stockpile is almost completely gone. Just think about that for a minute. 65% of Patriot interceptors have been used since February. THAAD interceptor stockpiles, they are down at least 38%. And according to Reuters sources, the U.S. has burned through nearly half of its global supply of Tomahawk cruise missiles. That is our defense, and it is depleted to shockingly low levels. So here we are. A war that started to keep the Strait of Hormuz open may end with Iran controlling more of it than before. And the military that spent 5 months burning through the weapons that it would need for a real fight to prove a point in the Gulf. Look, in the end, the U.S. gains nothing from this war. A war that, by the way, nobody voted for. A war the American people actually voted against, very specifically. A war that has left our nation not just vulnerable, but more exposed than at any time in U.S. history. And again, the question tonight, for what? So joining us now to discuss, we have retired Air Force officer Karen Kotowski. Karen is joining us live tonight, and thank you for being here. I got to tell you, so frustrated with these reports of missile stockpiles being so depleted, because we know that this has been going on for some time. We know that we gave away a lot of missiles to Ukraine. We've given away a lot of hardware to Ukraine. And the idea, and you correct me if I'm wrong on this, was, well, military contractors love that idea. Yes, let's give away all these missiles. Let's give away these ATACMS because now you can order more. That's the old stuff. Order more from us and we'll start building it. There's a problem, though. The problem is from the time the order is placed to the time that those missiles are delivered is a span of years. And now we've burned through in 5 months virtually all of those long-range missiles. It just seems like complete malpractice. How do you view it?
Well, it is malpractice if your priority is defending America or maintaining a strong military around the world. That it is malpractice. But this is actually normal practice for, as you mentioned, the military-industrial complex. It is designed to provide very expensive items that do run out, that aren't in really mass produced, and then charge you extra when you run out, or you have to up your order or change the contract, change the delivery schedule. You're right, they don't have the capability to really respond to any of this production at scale. They can't do that. But what they can do, and what they are going to do, what they are doing, is charging us extra for those few that they will be able to provide. So this is really a win for the military-industrial complex as it has evolved. Unfortunately, that's not defense of America. That's not supporting America's interests. Now, there are problems with stupid strategies, and I don't think the military-industrial complex itself designs the wars and makes the choices of war that the president and his appointees, the Department of War, the interests. Israel in this case wanted a war, needed a war, and so that conversation went on very stupidly.
Yeah.
But whether you have the materials or not, the military-industrial complex at home does profit from this, and it's really we're getting to see it in living color, really.
Well, they profit from it while at the same time leaving the American people so vulnerable. And it's not just a physical vulnerability, which it is, but it's also kind of the mental game that war consists of. Now, listen, the Russians are smart. The Chinese are smart. They're spying on us, I'm sure. They're watching what we're doing. They've got intelligence. I don't know that they knew what they now know, if that makes sense. I don't know that the rest of the world knew how low these supplies were and how quickly the U.S. would burn through them and race through them. 5 months against Iran feels like, again, it's almost dizzying to think we could burn through so much of our stockpile in such a short amount of time, and again, against an enemy that we really haven't been in full combat with. It's kind of on again, off again.
Yeah, this is actually a real problem. And I think what Russia and China and the rest of the world are learning is how badly led we are. It's not just that we don't have enough stuff, it's how we use it.
Yes.
You talk about the missiles. Well, the targets, we are already, it's only been 5 months, but we're already hitting the same targets multiple times. And we're also hitting non-military targets because we've already hit military targets. And we're hitting, other things. There was a 2,000-pound bomb dropped on a village or something, made a big hole in the ground. I mean, that's not necessarily a military target, but we're wasting our equipment to do that. And the other thing is with these interceptor missiles, the Patriot and other interceptor missiles they're defensive, right? We're shooting at something that the Iranians have launched. We use It's not 1-to-1, right? There's a missile coming over and we shoot a interceptor. No, we shoot 2, 4, 6,
Right.
10 interceptors. And if any of those does the job, great, but you've just wasted 9. And we don't have the 9 to waste, and yet we're doing that. That is actually how we've been conducting this war from the beginning. So, I'm not going to blame a system. I mean, I am going to blame the military industrial complex for being there to profit from it, to really advise us poorly. But what are our military generals advising? What about the strategists? Did they not have a strategy of, being able to conserve our defensive equipment? It seems like they didn't. It seems like they just everybody's just kind of stumbling around.
Well, and I think one of the problems with the military strategy here is that the concept of war, especially from an American viewpoint, now that doesn't mean history is going to reflect this correctly, but from an American viewpoint, should be defensive, right? We're technically not supposed to be going around the world and trying to overthrow countries. We do it all the time, I understand, but we're not supposed to be doing that. And so one of the problems is that there wasn't, I think, ever a clear goal in mind of what this war was supposed to accomplish. What are we trying to do? Making sure that Iran will never have a nuclear weapon, so we're going to bomb them, doesn't really make much sense. Decapitation of leadership feels like is what it really was. And by the way, bombs are effective in that, clearly, because it did work. The problem is that the Iranians had a decentralized system set up to replace all that leadership immediately. So they didn't collapse like, if Saddam Hussein were killed, if Muammar Gaddafi is killed and the country spirals into chaos. It didn't happen here. And so it's almost as if we're playing on a playbook that's 40 or 50 years old, and it just didn't apply this time.
Yeah, we really are. It's an old playbook. We've done regime changes forever. One of the things, though, is we failed to learn that almost all of our regime changes have failed to deliver what was promised to the American people. Libya, for example. Well, I don't think people understood why Gaddafi had to be killed. But once we killed him, we said, oh, it'll be better for the Libyans. We're liberating the Libyans. Well, of course not. None of this works. And yet we continue to do it. So we really are operating on a 20th century playbook, but we're living in the 21st century with really our near peer competitors, those who would observe how we fight a war. They're way ahead of us. And I think they're actually shocked at how badly we are conducting ourselves. And that's worrying. That's worrying. As an American, it's not just embarrassing, it's worrying. But of course, this isn't a legal war. Don't forget,
Right.
We conducted an illegal war. And one of the reasons it's very stupid is Congress refused to exercise its Article 1, Section 8 powers to approve it, to discuss it, to debate it. They went along with it, and that's an American problem. That's an American government problem that is not yet solved.
The playbook is old. I've made this criticism before, but the military equipment we seem to be using is old as well. And I think in the era of drone warfare, we see how far behind we are. It feels like we are fighting the Iraq War 26 years later. And the problem is that the Iranians and the Chinese and the Russians, they're not stuck 25 years ago. They have moved so far beyond in terms of cheaper, lighter, faster, more effective, more lethal equipment. We got to catch up. And that means moving away from military industrial contractors who are gaming the system. I'll give you the last word here.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. I mean, we really, if the Americans get anything out of this war when it's over, and I think it's over. I mean, we're continuing it, but I mean, we've lost it. It's not going to be won militarily. But if we gain anything from it, we will re-examine, we'll thoroughly examine how it is we conduct defense of the United States, how we pay for it, how we make our decisions, the whole thing. And that is a very big problem for Americans. We'll see if we do it, but that would be the only positive that will come out of this. Otherwise, it's all negative for the United States.
Totally agree. And the best defense is to stop blowing up countries around the world that aren't even fighting with us. Karen, thanks so much for being on. We appreciate your insight.
Thank you.
All right, over now to the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. Tonight, 5 people are dead, 10 others are recovering after a Ukrainian drone strike in the Moscow region. RT's Roman Kosarev has the details on that tonight.
Back on the 25th of June, he promised Russia 40 days of hell to cripple the country's oil industry and generally inflict a major economic damage. Zelensky announced strikes against the oil industry, bridges, railways, ships and ports, military facilities in Crimea and across Russia that were supposed to bring the lives of ordinary Russians to a standstill and make Moscow beg for peace. But what happened in reality? Well, the Kiev regime's terrorist attacks managed to temporarily cause a fuel shortage that was, well, quickly rectified, targeted the warehouses of an online marketplace and continued to hunt ordinary civilians that had absolutely nothing to do with the military. But more importantly, Zelensky had once again demonstrated his terrorist nature by killing scores of innocent civilians, innocent people. A day before the end of his 40-day grandiose plan, another terrorist attack against vacationers claimed the lives of 7 people, including 3 children who were at a beach in Russia's Gelendzhik and Krasnodar region. Is that what Zelensky meant by his so-called hellish strikes that were supposed to make Moscow beg for a humiliating peace? Dozens of civilians, including children, were killed or wounded by Ukraine's terrorist attacks over the last 40 days alone. But the goal of bringing Russia to its knees has not worked, as the country is functioning just like before. Now, what is happening in Ukraine, on the other hand? Well, the Russian forces continue methodical annihilation of assets of the Kiev regime all across Ukraine. Now, one of the most massive strikes with high-precision ballistic missiles and drones took place last Saturday with a focus on Kiev locations of the Ukrainian defense industry. The targets included military factories and plants, logistics centers, fuel and energy infrastructure facilities, military airfields, warehouses for weapons and ammunition, production facilities, and storage areas for drones and their components. Well, Russian troops also continue to advance on all areas of the special military operation as Ukrainian troops face daily retreats and massive losses. Over the last week alone, Russia liberated at least 13 settlements while intensifying its strikes against the Ukrainian military-industrial complex. Of course, equally as damaging are the constant strikes against military bases housing both Ukrainian military and foreign mercenaries. Now, one of the most important gains in July is the liberation of Konstantinovka, right here in Donetsk People's Republic. That's a major city that the Kiev regime turned into a fortress.
И взятие Константиновки.
The capture of Konstantinovka by troops of the South Group of Forces opens a direct path for further advancement towards Kramatorsk and Slavyansk, as well as other fortified areas in Donbass, and is undoubtedly the key to liberating the entire territory of the Donetsk People's Republic. The enemy may undertake certain actions of a sabotage and terrorist nature, stage sorties, albeit with small forces, but with great propagandistic fanfare. The bravado statements by the leaders of the Kiev regime about successes that, as we know, do not actually exist are, in principle, to our advantage. Since these performers truly know how to do nothing else, they were never taught anything else, but through their actions and statements, they certainly disorganized both themselves and their sponsors.
Now, massive strikes that began on the 10th of July also continue against Ukrainian Black Sea ports infrastructure and vessels related to the military. The Russian Defense Ministry reports on a nearly daily basis about damaging and destruction of boats that carry military supplies for the Kiev regime and attacks against port facilities used by Ukraine. Now, that had also caused an economic impact as those strikes had also seriously undermined Ukraine's metallurgy industry. Usually, mining and processing plants in Zelensky's hometown of Kryvyi Rog had stopped its operations, as well as Poltava mining and processing plant, which is a part of the Swiss mining company Ferrexpo. And by the way, a major global container shipping company called Maersk had already discontinued its service through Ukrainian ports and redirected its cargo to Romania. Meanwhile, the former actor and comedian Zelensky seems to be completely unfazed by any of that and is now suggesting his own ideas of peace. According to one of his advisors, he wants to cease strikes against air targets, energy infrastructure, and along the front line, adding that the Kiev regime also considers freezing combat operations along the current line of contact, which should be followed by a transition to a negotiation. Now, so nothing but constant PR activities by the terrorist Kiev regime that continues to target civilians and civilian infrastructure, presenting it to the world as having some sort of an upper hand on the battlefield.
Well, tonight, Russia has charged Telegram founder Pavel Durov over allegations that the platform failed to remove content linked to terrorism. Durov says the real issue, though, is not terrorism at all. It's that he refused government demands for surveillance and censorship. That case is now fueling a much larger debate over free speech, online moderation, and whether or not tech founders should be held personally responsible for what happens on their platforms. So American Now's Olivia Flynn joins us now for a conversation about this. So Olivia, what exactly is Russia accusing him of? Because this is a pretty serious charge to be facing.
So, I mean, they're seeing it as he has links to terrorism because essentially they found chats on Telegram that have linked terrorism attacks, and that's how they were organizing them within the Telegram app. His response, however, is saying that, you know, at the end of the day, the point of this app is to be able to have free speech and to have privacy. Yeah. And this is the point of the app. This is how it was put out. It's been, you know, it's been out in the open in society for years now. And at the end of the day, his point is also saying that a message is going to get across either way. So it's not that his platform was fueling this terrorism act in any way.
Right. So I assume some of this goes back to like secret chat, right? Yes. So if you have Telegram, I do, I use it a lot. I use secret chat a lot. The way it works is you have this ability.
It's end-to-end encrypted.
To end-to-end encrypt, yeah. But it's actually device-to-device encrypted, exactly. Which means that it doesn't ever go to the cloud. So the only way you can actually access this is if it's on one phone or the other, but you lose those two devices, it doesn't exist anywhere else.
It vanished. And essentially, you know, that's, people wish that, you know, you unsend that message, you're like, ooh, phew, that's gone now. Well, with Telegram, in a way, it's more true that way, whereas all the meta apps, WhatsApp, you look at iCloud devices, Instagram, those are meta encrypted, and there's back doors where the government can access and get into that information.
And
but with But with Telegram, you can't. And essentially it goes back, you know, look at it from a human perspective. The guy in the room who, you know, is hated the most is the one who can do whatever they want.
That's true.
Telegram is that app in a way.
I run into that problem all the time.
Sure.
Here's the other issue with Mark Zuckerberg and WhatsApp, right? Yeah. So WhatsApp has a big advertising campaign, end-to-end encrypted, right? We can't even see what's in your messages. Lies, they're lying. Yeah. That's not true.
And it's funny you say that. Mark Zuckerberg actually put out, he said something on X now, and we can get to it in a second, but essentially he was saying that the point of his apps, he wanted to get to more free speech, less censorship on things. Right. And, you know, I think a lot of these apps are trying to get there, but listen to what he had to say here.
Listen. It's time to get back to our roots around free expression on Facebook and Instagram. I started building social media to give people a voice. I gave a speech at Georgetown 5 years ago about the importance of protecting free expression, and I still believe this today. But a lot has happened over the last several years. There's been widespread debate about potential harms from online content. Governments and legacy media have pushed to censor more and more.
Yeah, nope.
People are laughing
over one single thing he said there.
No, and it's true. It is because
this is the man who had fact checkers from NGOs on his platform, banning people and throwing people off. I remember one of the fact checks I had during COVID, right? I just got to tell the story real quick. One of the fact checks I had was from USA Today, where they were fact checking an entire report detailed about the efficacy of masking that included granular details from studies that had been done over 10 years. The writer who said it was untrue writes in the first line that they never bothered to actually watch the report.
And you know what people are saying too is that even if you go into the rules behind when you sign up for these apps, if you really look at that, 300-page document that no one actually reads, it doesn't say anything about actually being protected because there's all these behind the door, these rules these backdoor way in. So it's, you know, at the end of the day, you're not really protected in any way. Whereas again, bringing it back to Telegram, bringing it back to what's happening with the app, people are upset because the government can't have that backdoor in. So they're locked out.
Yeah, it's a joke to think that any Meta property, right, is a free speech site. It's not. It's also a joke to believe that any of them are not constantly surveilled by the government, right? And we know this is true. This goes back to, MSN. It goes back to all kinds of websites that have been set up for years. Microsoft software. A lot of the most famous viruses that have been created in history that have been used for ransomware, they get in because they're using the government backdoors that governments force tech companies to put in.
Right.
So there's a secondary problem that's created, specifically when the US government has gone in and demanded that companies like Microsoft put in these backdoors. Hackers get in there and they're able to access the same thing. If you create a backdoor, somebody else can use it. It's not just government.
And that's just how things work. When you put up barriers, look at children, for example. When you were said no for something, you have more of a motivation to figure out how to get around it. And I think that in a way, when it comes to these apps, the hackers, or however you want to look at it, when there are firewalls, you have a catalyst to be like, how am I going to figure out a way around this? And then that way gets put into these apps, whereas Telegram's just saying from the beginning, we're not giving you those ways in, basically.
Listen, I'm a free speech absolutist, so I like the fact that Telegram does this. But in fairness, too, I think there is a point to be made about if terrorists are organizing terror activities on your app, it does create a problem, right? Has Telegram said anything about how they're trying to monitor it? If they say, we don't want government in there, fine, but how are they trying to monitor it within the company?
There hasn't been any comment on that yet. They actually put out one video that you can find on X, and it's essentially their response is this dancing video of them saying this is their response to it, which some people are saying is mocking the situation because terrorism is real. That's terrible. We don't want that in the world. But, at the end of the day, you can have these conversations on any app, really.
We're super short on time, but real quick, I saw yesterday there was a claim that Telegram got taken off the App Store by Apple and then it was back up in a short time.
There's been no confirmation about that from Apple, and also whether maybe it was a glitch on Telegram's side. And there's also been reports that this has happened before in the past with Telegram. So I think a lot of people are interested, was it intentional? Was it an accident? Whereas at the end of the day, this is about free speech.
Or is it marketing?
Is it marketing?
Yeah.
Is it PR?
I don't know. But we don't know if it actually came from them.
Yeah.
Olivia, good to talk to you.
Always.
Thank you. All right, that is America Now for now. I'm Ben Swan. For more stories, visit our website, rt.com, and be sure to join us every night at 7, 8, 9, and 10 p.m. Eastern. Have a great night. Remember to question everything.